Where did the name come from? Spinzo is an odd name.
Do you want the honest answer or the answer we usually give?
The honest answer.
Okay, the honest answer is I've owned the Spinzo.com name for years, 20 years actually. The name means nothing. I bought it thinking that I could use this for any company that I want to. It's kind of like Starbucks or Amazon or Google. Doesn't really mean anything. You could sell what you want. Ultimately, it became Spinzo.
Interesting. So what was the genesis of Spinzo? How did it start? Was it always a ticketing company? Was it something else?
It was not always a ticketing company. So if you remember the early days of Groupon, it was that discount buying system where if 20 people agree to buy this pizza, it's 50% off for everyone.
Yeah.
So I loved that concept, but I felt it was maybe not great from the merchant standpoint. I felt it should be more fluid. Like if 10 people want the pizza, it's this price. If 20 people want it, it's a better price. If 50 people want it, it's a better price. So I liked that concept. So I built that. And at the time we called it crowd pricing. So the bigger the crowd, the better the price for the offer. So we built that and we launched it in Toronto. And we were actually a Groupon competitor in Toronto. So we were doing small businesses. We were selling burgers and chocolates and things like that. We thought ultimately it would be good for the retail market.
Yeah.
So companies like Sears, Staples, or Home Depot, for example. So the more people that want to buy a product, the less everyone has to pay for that product. So the more committed buyers, the lower the price. So we started off that way, but ultimately it was a tough challenge in the market. And we learned that the best place for this technology was in the service industry. We did well with Toronto Zoo, Canada's Wonderland, Wildwater Kingdom. So we learned it was better for those kind of things, like tickets, things that if you didn't sell for the day, you lost your opportunity. So eventually we made our way into ticketing and eventually sports ticketing.
Who was your first client when you first started?
It was actually a Segway company. They did Segway tours out of the distillery district in Toronto.
Okay. And did that go well?
We did sell some Segway tours. And actually, we had a launch party in Toronto, and they came with a Segway. And so they were driving around on the Segway. So the more people that wanted to ride around on a Segway in Toronto, the better the price for them.
Okay.
They seemed to like it.
How did you end up doing sports ticketing? You went from crowd pricing, and I assume maybe it didn't do well, and you transitioned into sports ticketing. What happened there?
Yep. So we learned that the crowd pricing technology seemed to be better for tickets, like Toronto Zoo, Canada's Wonderland, Wildwater Kingdom. It was better for that. So the more people that wanted to come on a Tuesday to the zoo, the better the price for everyone.
Right.
That Tuesday at the zoo. So we learned it was best for tickets. And we actually had a connection. A guy on our board went to Yale, played hockey with a guy that owned a small piece of the Arizona Coyotes hockey team. So through that, we got connected. It took about 6 months to get the connection there. And I got connected to the head of ticketing at the Arizona Coyotes. The first call I had with him, I told him about crowd pricing, and he said, his name is Jeff Mirander. It's well known in the industry. He said, Emmanuel, this is going to change group ticketing in this industry. And I said, Jeff, don't be playing with me. He said, I'm not. He said, this will be big and I'll help you get there.
So the Coyotes was first client.
The Arizona Coyotes was our first client. He walked us in the door of Ticketmaster, which became a very important partnership with us because Ticketmaster tickets a lot of the sports teams in North America. And so through that partnership, we now have gained access to launch our product alongside them.
What would you say is the hardest part of starting a business, just in general?
I think the hardest part is getting the interest from your buyers early on. So when you first start your company, you think everyone's going to be interested in your product and you're going to build your product. And ultimately, when it's built, you're then going to go and sell it. But the problem is you have to involve the sellers early on in the process. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't understand that. Once they build their product, they realize it's very hard to sell it. And so they should have been soliciting the interest before the product was built.
Interesting. That's insightful. So you're saying people, before they even make a product, you should get crowd information.
Yep, exactly. If I had to redo Spinzo before even building any piece of it, I would go to a sports team and I would say, I'm going to build for you a system that will sell your group tickets, promotional tickets, kids club tickets, youth sports tickets. I'm going to build it. I promise you I will. I want you to tell me what you need in such a product. And in doing so, they're really doing the product development for you. And so it's a bit of an easier task. And as the product gets built, you have your first clients.
Very
So
insightful.
that's the hardest part, to really get that demand early on, and everyone complains about it. But if you flip the equation a bit and solicit the demand as the product is being built, I think you'll have better success.
Yeah. Oh, okay. What would you say is one of the most challenging parts of running Spinzo?
The most challenging part about running Spinzo, I think, is dealing with the plethora of people that exist in the world.
People problems.
It's people problems. That's what the problem is. So, for example, we work with a lot of different sports teams across Canada, United States, and Australia. Those sports teams have sales reps, managers, directors, and everyone operates differently. Some people need a lot of training on the platform. Some people learn on their own. Some people are lazy and they're duds. Other people are go-getters. And so the challenge is having to deal with those people and accommodate all the various needs of those people.
What is the best part of running Spinzo? What excites you? What do you find fun in your job? I hope you do.
I do. I find it a lot of fun. I love the game. I love the game of business. The competition, the rush. In fact, sometimes I like losing. I like losing a client. Or I like losing a pitch. I like losing a pitch because you lose the pitch and you say, you know what? They're coming back to me. I've got the better product. They're coming back to me. It's about re-strategizing. It's like a giant game of chess. You lose the battle, but you win the war. So I love that game. I love fighting for clients. I love fighting for a piece of the mind share. I love fighting for a piece of the wallet of sports teams. I think it's a great rush.
I'm going to assume you're good at chess.
I do play chess. I was a competitive chess player when I was younger in high school.
What would you say, a couple things that make Spinzo better or special compared to your competitors?
I think it's simple. We care. We care more than most other companies do. And I think part of the reason for that is that I started the company myself 14 years ago, and I'm still here. I built the product. I'm vested in it. So I truly care. If a customer's having a hard time buying tickets or having a hard time retrieving the tickets they bought, I feel it personally. At most other companies, they don't, because the people running it aren't the people who started it. So they don't have that same care. They're just hired bodies to continue running the affair. Right?
So you have been the CEO since the genesis of Spinzo.
I have, yeah. I'm the founder and CEO. I started the company. I built most of it. I had some programmers who helped me along the way, but I built the outsized piece of Spinzo. I set up a lot of the sales and marketing initiatives early on. I brought in help, of course, over time, but I cared deeply for it. And so when one of our sports team clients is having an issue, if they ever have an issue, I feel vested to jump in there and help them fix it. I don't pawn it off to someone else or tell them I'm going to deal with it tomorrow. I truly care.
How many employees do you have at Spinzo?
Spinzo only has 5 employees.
No way.
It's very efficient. We run really well, and we're not working nonstop.
Yeah.
Sometimes I say we kind of work half-time. It's a bit of a lie. It's maybe a little more than half-time, but we do enjoy ourselves, actually.
Yeah. If, let's say, you could go back in time and you get to talk to Emmanuel 14 years ago, younger, more naive Emmanuel, what advice, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give him?
If he wants to get into entrepreneurship?
Yeah. Anything, life, entrepreneurship.
Yeah. I'd say if I was talking to young Emmanuel about entrepreneurship, I would say, be prepared to stand alone. If you go into the path of entrepreneurship, many people are going to try to dissuade you from doing it.
Yeah.
But not only that, once you're in it, and you'll face struggles, you always do. Talk to any entrepreneur, they've always faced struggles. When you face those struggles, there's going to be people around you. It's going to be friends. It's going to be family. They're going to tell you, why don't you just get a regular job?
Yeah.
Why don't you just go back to doing software development?
Yeah.
I know a guy at a company, he'll hire you in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Why don't you do that? But if you have conviction, you have to be prepared to stand alone, despite what everyone else says.
That's tough advice.
It is. And you have to, and I think it's what makes a great entrepreneur. Someone who's willing to go the journey solo. They'll gladly take the help of others.
Yeah.
But if all others abandon them, they'll continue the process solo. And if they have success, others will eventually come into the fold.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. If not Spinzo, then what else would you have done? If you could pick right now, or you could go back and change your past, what would you have done instead?
Well, as they say, no regrets.
Yeah.
However, I will say that I find Spinzo to be a very complicated company.
Yeah.
We work with sports teams. There are clients, but then there's ticket buyers. So you're dealing with them. And then there's companies like Ticketmaster who have control over the ticketing. So there's a lot of moving parts in our company. I think I would do a much simpler company, something very simple and basic, but still could be impactful, but not a joke. And so the company that comes to mind is Wordle. So a lot of people love Wordle. They do it every day. Every day there's one word. So the company just has to think of one word. It's a simple application. You have 5 guesses. You know, the colors flip.
I didn't know it was a company.
Yeah, well, it was, and it was bought by the New York Times, I believe. And so it's a very simple product. It's a very simple value proposition. It's just fun, entertaining. I think I'd like to do simpler companies like that.
You like the simple life, Emmanuel?
I do like the simple life. That's why at Spinzo we like to automate things.
Yeah.
So try to make things as easy as possible.